It's the debate that raged on for all of 2021-2022. Who would go first overall in the 2022 draft, and who would the Montreal Canadiens take? Shane Wright, the first overall projected center that had been projected to go in this spot for years, literally years, since the guy was like 15 years old or whatever it was. He was projected to being first overall. Or would the big Slovak winger playing for Team Slovakia at the Olympic Games and the World Championships, who had rose up the draft rankings after being a pretty good prospect in the eyes of most people at the start of the year, but not really one of those number one caliber talents, in JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY go first overall instead? The entire debate was huge, and we made a ton of videos going over Wright versus Slafkovsky. Here's what some people think, here's what Kent Hughes said that might allude to the idea of taking one guy over the other, etc, etc, etc. It's all on the YouTube channel if you want to document the Wright versus Slafkovsky argument of 2021-2022. But in this video, I wanted to focus on a little bit more than that. I wanted to pose just a very simple question, and I want you to go nuts in the comment section below because I feel like this is a question that can really garner a huge discussion behind it. It's a simple one. In 2022-2023, who scores more points in the NHL? Shane Wright for the Seattle Kraken or JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY with the Montreal Canadiens? I think it's pretty clear to see for both teams, the Kraken and the Habs, that they're both going to play these players in their rookie seasons in 22-23. And so I just kind of want to bring the argument to the forefront that says, hey, who's going to go out there and produce more? Because at the end of the day, when it came to Shane Wright and him actually dropping the 4th overall after being touted as a first overall guy since the guy was like a preteen pretty much, we saw the disappointment. We had made a video talking about his reaction to slipping all the way to number 4. We also made another video talking about why each team selected their guy instead of Wright. Slafkovsky at number 1, Nemec at number 2, and Logan Cooley at number 3. There's a ton of conversations we can have about Shane Wright going 4th, and there's a ton of conversations we've already had about Wright versus Slafkovsky and which one would be the better pick. I know long-term it's easy to say that Slafkovsky has himself a sky-high ceiling. People went out there and compared him to Jaromir Jagr for crying out loud. I mean, Marian Hossa went out there and said that, and it's difficult to go out there and say that Marian Hossa, of all people, has a wrong opinion about a hockey player. But for JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY, he does have a sky-high ceiling. It's just the likelihood of him being able to hit it, in my opinion, is not all too guaranteed in comparison to a Shane Wright, who could be a number 1 center at the NHL level, a 90-point caliber guy that isn't really the fastest, isn't really the biggest, isn't really the most dangly, but who could be the smartest and most cerebral player on the ice at any given moment. Shane Wright just has some great offensive capabilities, and JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY has a resume against men at international tournaments that shows off that his offensive skill set is also something to be reckoned with. Which is why I'm trying to ask who scores more in 22-23. Let's go over each of the scenarios, go over the potential deployment, and what exactly we could see out of both of these players next season. Before we get into that though, a word from the sponsor of today's video. This video is sponsored by Manscaped.com, the premium global brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. Manscaped sent me their Perfect Package 4.0, which is an all-in-one men's grooming kit for body hair removal from head to toe. Included is the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. It's waterproof and cordless and can be used on hair anywhere on the body. It also has ceramic blades, skin-safe technology, a 7,000 RPM motor, plus a wireless charging dock and a travel lock feature. The Perfect Package kit also includes the Crop Preserver liquid deodorant and the Crop Reviver toner spray. Believe me on this one, these change the game. You never know you needed these until you try them out. And for a limited time, when you get the Perfect Package 4.0, you get 2 free gifts, the Shed Travel Bag and Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. So what are you waiting for? Head over to Manscaped.com and get 20% off plus free shipping and those 2 free gifts when you use my promo code LR99 at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping and 2 free gifts with code LR99 at Manscaped.com. For JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY, it's pretty simple. He's likely going to go out there and play alongside of Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, and for all intents and purposes, we could probably assume that's going to be the first line. If not a top power play unit, if not the line the Canadiens have that gets the most offensive zone starts. Because for JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY, I mean, You want to put players that you get that have sky-high potentials in the position to succeed, and that's what the Canadiens would be doing if they play Slafkovsky with two of the best players on the Canadiens already. Caulfield is a guy that kind of doesn't really need any help. I mean, we all kind of know that Caulfield is good enough on his own to carry a line pretty much. Playing with Suzuki, he was even better. Playing with Slafkovsky, a guy who could potentially open up space for them, get them the puck a little bit more in board battles, and find himself some free space as well when he doesn't have the puck, this could be a very lethal kind of combination, depending on if it's something that actually persists throughout the 82-game season. Now, it's kind of interesting trying to project points here, because for Nick Suzuki, I could totally see Suzuki going out there and getting maybe 70, 75 points on the year. For Cole Caulfield, I mean, the sky's really the limit. The guy was scoring at a 40-something goal pace under Martin St. Louis, so if he goes out there and gets 30 goals on the year and 60 total points, I really wouldn't be all too surprised. But by default, it kind of means that Slafkovsky has to get in on the numbers too, right? Because if he's going to be playing with Suzuki and Caulfield for the majority of the year, you could probably assume he's going out there and getting some points here and there as well. Maybe, let's say 20, 30 assists on the season and 15 goals. If he plays on a different line, things will change up a little bit. If you try to put Slafkovsky alongside of an Anderson and a Doc, for example, like, that's a big, giant line right there. And I definitely don't want to go out there and mess with anybody on that line, but the offensive potency, in my opinion, isn't really all too present on a Doc, Slafkovsky, Anderson line than it would be on a Slafkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki line. I guess it all really just depends on where St. Louis ends up playing these guys. But at the end of the day, if Slafkovsky goes out there and gets himself, let's say, 50 points on the year playing with Suzuki and Caulfield, I wouldn't be all too surprised. I would start to be a little bit surprised if Slafkovsky reaches the 60, 65 point marker, or if he gets even more than that. As for the floor, though, this is kind of where things get a little bit interesting, because Slafkovsky did not produce all too well in the Finnish Liga under TPS in the regular season. That was always sort of a footnote in the profile of Slafkovsky's draft season, is that he wasn't all too productive in regular league play, although as the year went on and when the playoffs started, they did give him a little bit more of an extended role, which is why he produced a lot better for TPS, 7 points in 18 games in the postseason. Also, of course, there was the World Championships and the Olympics where he was really good as well, but you could definitely make the argument that says that, hey, the Olympic Games were not featuring NHL talent, the World Championships didn't really feature all too many great players either, so if a guy like Shane Wright potentially suited up for the Olympics on Team Canada, who knows how many points that guy would have gotten. So, going over onto Shane in the Seattle Kraken system, you have yourselves what is likely going to be a number one center in Matty Beniers, meaning that Shane Wright is either going to be the second or the third line center. Depending on what the Kraken do with Yanni Gourde and Alexander Wenberg, we will see where exactly the dominoes fall in Seattle. I don't think they would go out there and try to put Shane Wright on the wing. Maybe there's something that's been said about that, I'm not really too sure, but like, Wright has been a natural center ever since he was a preteen, so it wouldn't really make all too much sense to play him on the wing, in my opinion. Meaning that the Kraken are going to have to go out there and force Shane Wright into a spot, either in their middle six or somewhere else if they see fit. As for Wright in Seattle, though, I mean, you have yourselves wingers on this team that are looking to prove something. Oliver Bjorkstrand was a really good acquisition from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Andrei Burakovsky was a great free agent signee. You still have Jaden Schwartz, you still have Eberle, you still have McCann. There are a lot of competent wingers here on this team that can go out there and actually do some damage. All Shane Wright needs to do is just feed these guys the puck and exhibit the same 3,000 IQ that he had in the OHL in order to properly put up points at the top league in the world. Now, I do want to throw a little bit of a disclaimer out there, because when it comes to other players that were first overall caliber guys, and I'm going to say caliber because Shane Wright going first overall, I don't think it would have surprised anybody if he did, so I would say he's a first overall caliber player. Lately, they've been taking a bit of time to really adjust to scoring at the NHL level. Lafreniere wasn't really all too great right away. Quinton Byfield, who went after him, second overall in 2020, same thing. Of course, you have Jack Hughes and Capo Caco in 2019. That was a very interesting discussion. And so for Shane Wright, if he goes out to Seattle and he's relied upon as a top six center right away, I'm not really too sure if he's going to go out there and, like, actually be amazing right off the bat. For Slafkovsky, it's easier to say that's likely because he'll be playing with the best players on the team. But with Wright, it's a little bit different there. Like, I like Andrei Burakovsky, I like Oliver Bjorkstrand, I like Jaden Schwartz too, but Caulfield and Suzuki are in a different kind of tier, in my opinion, if that makes sense. So, at the end of the day, I do feel like intrinsically, just based off of the circumstance of where these players would play, it's easier to see why Slafkovsky could get more points in 22-23, but then again, you also have to say that Slafkovsky has to manage himself properly and transition properly too, because he did not have the best productive season in the Finnish Liga in regular league play. Meanwhile, Shane Wright was a 90-point player in 60-something games played, in a season where a lot of people would actually say he underperformed. So if that's the case with Shane Wright, there's another gear that he is capable of unlocking playing for the Seattle Kraken, hopefully as early as year one. I would love to see it. I kind of want the Seattle Kraken to go out there and start becoming good, because just them being the laughingstock of the Pacific Division, being at the bottom there, it's gonna get old really quickly, man. I want to see Beniers do well. I want to see Shane Wright do well. I want to see Slafkovsky do well as well in Montreal. So talk in the comments all your thoughts about who is going to produce more points in 2021, or not 2021, in 2022-2023 between the first and fourth overall picks in this year's NHL Draft. Montreal Canadiens winger JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY or Seattle Kraken center Shane Wright. Talk in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY. And bye.